Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel with me, Only Run Very Noob, bringing you Guardian gameplay. Today we are still playing Victor. I'm definitely very in love with this deck. Not entirely sure if it's what I'm going to play at the Pro Tour, but I really want it to be. So I'm testing just like the heck out of it. And we'll see if I'm on this deck or Bravo come LA. But today we're playing against Bravo, as I promised last Thursday, I believe it was. I would tally up what matchup you guys wanted to see in the comments, and the winner would be the matchup I would show. And the winner happened to be Bravo. So today we're going to be going into Bravo. I think that we are unfavored against Bravo. They just have like ways to end the games in like end game states. They have Dominate, they have like Tear Asunder, and we really only have like 3 staunches to stop that, so we kind of got to keep up on value and save our armor. Not too sure what happened here and with Image Not Found, but the cards I'm citing out are 2 E-Strikes and 3 Spinal Crushes, and 1 card I'm not sure what it is. So I guess I misspoke earlier when I said I only had 3 staunches. In this build, it looks like I had 2 Sink Below as well. I've been switching the build around quite a bit, just sort of turning knobs, seeing what I can manage to accomplish with the limited sideboard space. And I guess right now I fell on Sink Below because I felt it would probably be good in the mirror, or Guardian mirrors rather, and also decent against Kasai, Azuri, and the like. It's pretty good against stuff like Fi and Katsu as well, but I believe in Victor you just don't need it because you don't really want to be missing your clashes. You would rather just like clash and send back attacks. But in this game today, it does look like I'm on Sink Below. So hopefully that helps out in this matchup. Still keeping the block cards in, because even though we can lose clashes against Bravo, I still think we're heavily favored to win them because we've just built our deck to do that. And they're going to have like a bunch of defense reactions and like non-attack actions in their blue base as well. We notice our opponent has 2 more cards in their deck than we do. They're on 68, we're on 66. So just something to sort of note, that we kind of have to kill them or fatigue them with damage by taking tempo. They just make a surge and pass, and I think here our play is easy. Just make a surge and throw Prime to fight. Arsenaling the red Debilitate, which will be playable off this surge we got to create here. Our deck really doesn't utilize 4 cards hands like amazingly well, so just sending 9 is about as good as we could do. Like if we cited out our E-Strikes, so I think we only have 1 E-Strike in the list, so we could have potentially sent like 11 off a E-Strike or a Zealous Belting. We could have drawn like a Rouse hand, but it's sort of rare. Normally our 4 card hands are just going to be like sending 9 or 10 and then arsenaling a card. We also notice our opponent's on Crater Fist, not the new Gauntlets of Iron Will, so maybe we can eke out a point with our Gauntlets at some point in this game if we can use it to block like an obvious pummel. Our opponent gives us 3 cards and blocks 10. So probably expecting just a hammer for 4 here. And I think I'm just going to block it with Trounce. We could clean it up with the Sink Below, but I think I'd rather have Sink Below and Arsenal. I think I'm just going to block with Trounce and just hope to like bink it. And then on my turn, make a surge, throw Debilitate and Arsenal, and then Arsenal the Sink Below. The extra card from Trounce wouldn't do much, but the gold would turn on our Golden Sun. Ooh, and we actually do hit, and we even reveal a Wallop, I believe. or a thunk. So we get 2 might tokens here, so this is quite good. But like I was saying earlier, the card we draw doesn't do too much, but the gold turning on our Golden Sun is great. And I believe we could even keep, yeah, we can keep one of the reds in our hand. We could keep 2 reds in our hand, but I don't think we really want to do that. Probably just going to pitch the Choke Slam and the Debilitate to throw the Debilitate in Arsenal, and then Arsenal to sink below, keeping red Debilitate in hand. Not too sure why I decided to throw Choke Slam here. Debilitate is a way better on hit. And getting Sink Below and Arsenal also protects us against so many things our opponent could do. So I'm actually really surprised that I threw Choke Slam here. Choke Slam can sometimes be really good. Sorry about that. Choke Slam can sometimes be really good if they have like a Rouse the Ancients turn or a Pummel turn. But Debilitate is just sort of always 2 value. And they actually can't just block this one with 2 cards because we had double might. So I think it would have been way better to throw the Debilitate. They would have probably blocked with 3 cards and then sent Hammer for 4. But with this Choke Slam, they had an opportunity to maybe take some damage and send like a big threat back that we would want our Sink Below and Arsenal for. So yeah, a little interesting here. They just have a Pummel, which they pitch stack. We got to be mindful of that. But I'm going to throw Righteous Cleansing just because it's more damage, and clearing the Arsenal for the Sink Below wouldn't be right here. We're just going to throw our bigger threat while we have the room to do so without sacrificing anything, and really try to start to get cards out of their deck, because they started with 2 more cards in deck than us. So if we ever want to fall back on like a fatigue plan, we have to be throwing the biggest attacks as possible. Our opponent just gives us all of their armor, which is kind of scary because we're probably getting like Rouse the Ancients here, Dominating Crippling Crush or something. And if we had this Sink Below and Arsenal, we would be like a lot more protected against a lot of the threats that they could potentially throw here. So I guess they took back all their armor and they're just using some of it. So instead of using all their armor to dodge the crush effect, they're just using 2 armor to like save 4 life here. Not entirely sure why you would want to save 4 life instead of maybe use those armor to stop crush effects later. But we hit with Righteous Cleansing, and we sort of see an interesting choice here. There's potential we just take the Pummel and sort of make them throw like a Starstruck at us. They'll probably block with a Starstruck and then throw Starstruck at us off a Surge, and we can just block that out, where the Pummel is like a little bit harder to stop. We do have the Sink Below in hand, which maybe still be there for the Pummel. But what I just mentioned about them having 2 more cards in deck than us, and us really wanting to beat them on fatigue if we can. Like, I'm not necessarily trying to fatigue my opponent, but it's something I'm always mindful of, especially when playing Victor over Bravo. Bravo can close games, but oftentimes Victor just sort of can't. Like, he has to just keep throwing attacks and fatigue with damage. So it's something I'm always keeping on my mind. And for that reason, taking 2 cards is just good. But even more than taking 2 cards, we're taking 2 cards that would force us to block with like 3 if they got to throw it, because it's like a big 10 power attack. So I think I will just take both Starstrucks here and sort of let him have like 2 blues and Pummel, and hopefully that Pummel doesn't come back to bite us with like a CNC and Arsenal or anything like that. My guess would be they're going to keep their Arsenal this turn. There is potential they like Rouse into Crippling Crush from Arsenal with the Surge, but I think that's way rarer than them just having like a normal rouse turn into like a debilitate from hand or a dominated crippling crush. So yeah, we see the rouse. Okay, I'm not too sure what this is about. They play a Smashing Good Time from Arsenal. I think Smashing Good Time is a perfectly reasonable sideboard choice, just not into Victor. So I'm not too sure what this is. Maybe they thought it could like destroy a gold, but they can't because it has to destroy an item that costs 2 or less, and gold just doesn't have a cost. So not having a cost isn't actually less than 2. It just can't destroy it at all. It is kind of like a nimblism here for their rouse though, so they're gonna rouse me for 10. Ooh, and they have Crippling Crush and a blue, so they're gonna send 16 at me in Arsenal of Crippling Crush, which is kind of a lot of damage. So what do I want to do with this hand? Part of me wants to try to get this Sink Below into Arsenal for the Crippling Crush follow-up, but that would almost have to be with Crown, because to get this Debilitate out of my arsenal, I don't have a Surge, so I'd have to keep 2 cards and the Sink Below. So that means I'd only block 3 and take 13, which I do think is just way too high of a cost to pay here. Is there merits to the Crown play? I like having Crown of Providence for like CNC Pummel, which they might sacrifice a bunch of life to do at some point in the game. So I think I might just let them Crippling Crush me next turn and block 13 and just take 3. So we can block like 10 on this Rouse the Ancients. Oh, we could use the Civic Steps too. I think this is a fine use of Civic Steps. We could save it for like the the Zealous Beltings we might know they have in deck, but if they ever have 2 cards behind a Zealous Belting, it's a little scarier just because they might have E-Strike. Although you see E-Strike a lot less in Tectonic Plating lists than you do in Tunic lists. So the Civic Steps just getting value here is probably fine, and we can still block like 9 on the Rouse the Ancients and then block 6 on the Hammer. So we know this Quicken's not going to do anything. Yeah, and then we just end up blocking 6 here. And sort of bracing for impact on this Crippling Crush, which we know is coming. But I don't think taking 3 to like send back 4 would really mitigate the Crippling Crush at all here. I think they could just like block 3 and still dominate a Crippling Crush. We get incredibly fortunate. We top deck a Staunch Response. Turn 5 though, we've seen a third of our deck and we play 3 Staunch Responses, so maybe that was like reasonable to expect. Okay, so this is definitely interesting. They don't dominate this Crippling Crush, so they're going to just pummel it with the pummel that we know they have. Of course, because we saw it off of the Righteous Cleansing. So how do we block a pummeled Crippling Crush? I think I just block 3 and then Staunch for 10 in response to their pummel. But if we block 3 and they don't pummel, we're kind of stuck staunching it, and then they get to just arsenal their pummel, so it's kind of like a bad spot. But I think that's kind of the only line we can really take here. Maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe we should just no block. And then staunch. And then force him to pummel our card away. We could also block with gauntlets and staunch. That would be 12. And he would only go up to 14. We would still lose our last card, but we'd only take 2 and force him to use his pummel. This is an interesting line. Why don't you comment down below what you would do here, knowing that the pummel is coming? Because I think blocking 3 and then staunching is good because he pummeled me here, but he didn't need to pummel me here. He could have just like tried to allow crippling to hit, and either I over staunch it and he can just arsenal the pummel and move on, or I get hit for 8. Of course I could just staunch for 7 and take 1, but then he pummels me and takes my last card and I take 5. So it worked out for me this time because I think my opponent got a little greedy and just sort of like wanted to get rid of all 3 of my cards instead of just 2 of them, maybe. Well, this hand is kind of easy. I hope I just have to block with Test of Strength because he drew like a clunker, and then I can throw Thunderquake. If that's not what happens though, I'll block for like 7. Oh, you know what? I think I should probably just block for 7 anyway, because Test of Strength might trigger and draw a card. And if it doesn't, I can still just throw Debilitate and pitch stack my Thunderquake. Yeah, I think blocking 7 is better than blocking 4 here. And even if I do hit but don't draw a blue, I can then throw the Debilitate and arsenal the Thunderquake. Ooh, and we do hit, and I find the line. Just block 7 here. And if you win, it's great, and if you lose, it's still fine, because you still just send basically 10 value off the Debilitate. It's not exactly 10, because I can block for 5, and then it's only 8, but it's like, if you lose your clash here, you're actually not that bad off. But we did win, and we did draw the blue, so we get to just send 10 here. We have an armor advantage, and I'm feeling pretty good about my spot here. Got a little fortunate with that staunch response, but hey, that's I think we take those when we are playing a matchup that's a less than favored. Their E-Strike for 7 I think is fine. We just block with 6 with Prime to fight and Macho Grande, and then E-Strike back for 7. Trying to keep our life total high so we're not just like dying to dominate that we don't have to die to. Because at some point we're going to be at a low enough life where they can like make trades that we don't really have agency over. So I take all the damage here. I guess I want to rouse into E-Strike for 7. Yeah, I guess that is worth 1 more point, right? If I block 6 and send 7, that's just 13 value. But if I rouse the Ancients into E-Strike, that's 14 value. Maybe the rouse play is right here. It's only 1 more point of value, but I am sacrificing quite a bit of life there. And like I said, against Bravo, I think maybe I want to protect my life a little bit more, just so I'm not just like getting closer to being dead to dominate. But we do have a threat in Arsenal, so if we get his whole hand to block here, we can at least know that we're doing something besides hammer. I don't know, that's kind of an interesting spot too. I guess when deciding between 2 lines, just taking the one that's worth like an extra point is probably hard to be wrong. As a heuristic, just counting your value and doing the higher value play is probably going to get you further than trying to get cute. We even get them to block with a 2-block Zealous Belting. I think they probably should have just like not blocked with the Zealous Belting, took an extra 2 damage and arsenaled it. But it is what it is. We're gonna pitch this Trounce for later and just throw the Prime to fight. We didn't have to pitch the Trounce here, but I don't think I need it. There's a chance he just blocks for 9 and like arsenals a card, and I don't want to be sandbagging that Trounce in my hand. And also now we get to like put attacks after it, so in the late game, potentially when he's got like unmovables and random like showtimes still in his deck, we'll actually win the Trounce at a higher rate. Kind of an ugly hand. No blues. We have a Zealous Belting. And we have a Staunch Response too. We don't really want to pitch. But I don't think it was that hard of a decision. Because we have a Surge, we can throw Debilitate in our arsenal off 3. We have a 4-block to easily cover up the Anothos. If we win this clash and draw blue, it's all gravy. We get to Zealous Belting and to Debilitate and Arsenal Staunch. But even if we lose, we get to just throw Debilitate and then Arsenal Staunch, pitch stacking our Zealous Belting. I don't think I can afford to destroy gold to reclash here. Our opponent didn't win, so they don't get the gold, and I would rather keep the gold I do have to keep these Golden Suns on. Yep, just throw 8 in Arsenal and Staunch Response, getting ready for his next big trade. Might not come this turn because he's incentivized to block the Debilitate, but having a Staunch and Arsenal just feels really good against Bravo. We still have Crown, so even if he takes a bunch of damage to like CNC pummel us, we can save our Staunch, put it at the bottom. Hopefully not immediately, because I don't want it to be like Zealous Belting, Golden Sun, Staunch, pitch stacked again. I'd rather fit a blue in between that Golden Sun and the Staunch, but you do what you gotta do. Still feeling pretty decent about my spot here, especially with that Staunch and Arsenal. Here I actually got a lot of choices of what I want to block with. If we block with Vigor, we can float a Surge if we win. If we block with Might, we get to just send 11 if we win. So I think Clash of Might beats Clash of Vigor here, because floating a Surge, the value of that is pretty variable. But the value of just throwing 11 off Thunderquake instead of 10 is like absolute. You get +1 point, where the Surge might not always get you a point. Or we could block with the Buckling Blow and not risk giving our opponent a token. I think I like just blocking with Clash of Might. If we're not favored in the matchup, maybe you got to risk it for the biscuit and take some chances. We end up tying, so it's not as bad as it could be, and we still get to send 10, which is quite good. It always surprises me how effective just throwing like 3-card 10 is. 3-card 10 is really not great. Like I would say it's like on rate, but slightly below rate. Like 10.5 off 3 is what I would say on rate is. 3.5 per card is probably on rate. But in these Guardian Mirrors, just having a threat to throw is pretty good. Here I think I will block with Clash of Vigor. Oh no, wait, I already have a D-React in Arsenal. I was trying to think of how I could get Sink Below in Arsenal, but this isn't Debilitate in Arsenal, it's Staunch Response, so I don't need to save the Sink Below. I can literally just Sink to get the full 4-block value, and then I can just Anothos for 6, pitching Righteous Cleansing and Thunderquake. Unfortunately, we can't keep Righteous Cleansing in our hand, because if we pitch Clash of Vigor and Thunderquake, our hammer's only for 4. Because Clash of Vigor only costs 2. So just blocking 4 here seems fine. We could even like sink the Righteous Cleansing, maybe. Or I guess sinking the Righteous Cleansing would have been more risky, and we would have gotten punished for it. So sink the Clash of Vigor, so we can always Anothos for 6 here with the 2 cards we have left. If I would have sunk the Righteous Cleansing to try to get like a threat in my pitch stack a little earlier, I would have only been Anothosing for 6 here off of the Trounce drawn, and that would have been a blunder. As you can see, sometimes my first thought process, because I was like, oh yeah, just sink the Righteous Cleansing, because I was focused on having a good pitch stack and like going threat into threat into threat ASAP. But upon further review, you realize, okay, I could draw a Trounce, I could draw another Clash, I could draw a bunch of stuff that would make my hammer only 4, and that would kind of be bad. So always think about your plays, don't just like hurry and rush. Our opponent took damage to keep 4 cards, so we're getting pummeled here, for sure. So how are we playing around this pummel? We have 3 blues, Clash of Vigor and Clash of Might, Trounce. It's kind of annoying, we gotta get rid of our Staunch Response, and we can't replace it with something good. And we don't even have like a red threat to throw unless we win the Trounce and draw one. And we could overblock for like 8 with Crown, but then he could just like not pummel us, and we have to decide to sink our arsenal before they decide to pummel or not. This is kind of an ugly spot. Maybe just blocking with Trounce, Crown, and Gauntlets of Will? No, that's pretty bad too. I think we want to keep 5 armor to block 3 plus 5 on a Dominated Crippling Crush that catches us by surprise. Yeah, this is actually a tough spot. I'm not entirely sure what I should do here. Blocking with Trounce is obvious. And I think blocking with Crown is kind of obvious too. But do I want to take 5 just to... Yeah, it does look like I want to take 5. We ended up winning the Trounce, which is nice. Ooh, and we draw right into a Staunch. That's like perfect. We're getting pummeled here. I would have rather maybe blocked with Clash of Might as well. I don't know, that's kind of a tough spot. I'm not entirely sure. But we drew a threat at least, so we get to throw back 10. Yeah, because if I block with Clash of Might, maybe I wanted to keep myself open to drawing like a 5 or 6 drop, because the pummel would make me discard, and then I'd have to... If I didn't win the Trounce and I had to discard, I would have wanted to have enough cards to play what I drew off Crown if it was a threat. So maybe that is fine. Our opponent just gives us the whole fridge on our just 10 non-disruptive damage, and because I get to tuck this Staunch in arsenal, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And we get to just Staunch Responses for 10 and then throw Chokeslam off of our Surge in our 3rd blue. That's about as perfect as you could wish for. But had we not drawn a Staunch, we would have had enough armor to block a Dominated Crippling Crush here. Of course, we wouldn't still have the armor because we would have had to use it. And now in this game state, I feel way, way, way ahead of my opponent. Just because I have such a big armor advantage, I'm going to have, I think, a 3 life lead once he blocks this for 6. And then he's only really going to have a 2-card hand to throw back, and we're just going to have like all of the options. If we have a hand that can throw damage back, we could take some damage. Oh, he ends up blocking the whole 4, or the whole whatever that was, 8. Yep, here I'm just gonna pitch the Test of Strength and Cranial Crush to throw 10, and then Arsenal Rouse, and this feels very good at this point. I still do think this matchup is unfavored, but if you draw your Staunch Response every time your opponent draws their Crippling Crush, and they're willing to trade to throw the Crippling Crush at you, you're probably going to be in a pretty good spot. So maybe as a Bravo player into Victor, you need to be mindful of this, to not like just make big trades to lose to like a Staunch Response. Not that every Victor is playing Staunch Response, but I think most of the lists I've seen have been on at least 2. I kind of forget what I have in Arsenal here. But I don't hate just blocking 5 and like hammering for 6. Oh, I have the Rouse in Arsenal, yes, of course. Not sure why I'd block with Thunderquake. I think I should block with Debilitate to pitch stack the Thunderquake for later. But either way, it's just hammer for 6. Not wanting to pop my last gold because I do have one more Golden Sun in my deck. If you ever have an abundance of gold and you have like a Debilitate and a blue, you can pop the gold with your blue and hope to draw another blue to throw the Debilitate. But even if you draw red, you can just like hammer for 6, pitching the 2 reds you have in your hand. I found that to be a lot better and a lot safer than doing like the 1 card and those for 6 play, because if you do that and draw red, you just have to like make a surge and pass. But if you have the red in hand that you're looking for a blue to cast, you can always just pitch the 2 blues to still come in for 6. The downside is like heavily mitigated there. But the fact we only have 1 gold left and we still have a Golden Sun in our deck means we're not getting rid of that gold. It's too important. So yeah, I'm just going to block 3 here to have a Zealous Belting turn. And of course blocking with the Clash, not because the value of the Clash is like huge, but because I want my hammer to be for 6. And of course if you pitch a Clash, your hammer will only be for 4. Ooh, we can Rouse this turn, can't we? I don't think I need to Rouse this turn though. I think just Zealous Belting is probably better. Because if I Rouse, I'd have to pitch the yellow and the Zealous Belting to hammer for 6. And I would rather just come in for 11 instead of 13 while maintaining the Rouse in Arsenal. I think our opponent probably should have used Civic Steps on our Zealous Belting. But maybe they were just happy to block out the entire turn, so I guess not. And now we get to Rouse. We'll show the 2 blues just to kind of hide what we're doing here, because I am going to make a Surge and then Debilitate for 8. Sorry if you can hear the landscaping going on outside. Never too sure what time they're going to come. They always come on Wednesday, but sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, and sometimes it's right in the middle of when I start recording, so apologies for that. Hopefully it's not too unbearable. Here I'm just going to take 4 so I can have another Rouse hand. And if you can see, we are definitely going to fatigue them with damage. We have 12 more cards in our deck than they do. We have 5 armor to cover up any sort of dominate shenanigans they might have. And at some point, we're going to draw into our third rouse, which will give us all the protection we could ever need. So I definitely think this game is ours at this point. I'm just going to swing Hammer for 6 and Arsenal the Thunderquake. Just in case I have an all blue hand that doesn't have an 8 in it, I can throw 8 instead of 6. I'll just pitch this Trounce again and prime to fight them for 9. We get the whole hand, and I'm not sure if they're just not being mindful of fatigue here, or if they just don't care. I think here I want to Zealous Belting into Golden Sun. There's a chance I could be more conservative and just block 3 with a blue and then pitch the Golden Sun again. But I think Zealous Belting into Golden Sun sort of cuts this game off. I don't know why I was hovering over my equipment. I can just go to 9. Oh, it looks like I am being more conservative. Just having a Zealous Belting turn and eventually getting back to my Golden Sun if I need it. But I don't think I'm going to get back to my Golden Sun. My opponent only has 13 cards in his deck. But maybe that's my win condition now. So just keeping my life total as high as possible is fine. Like getting his to 0 isn't super necessary. I'm going to block with Clash of Vigor and Civic Steps, just in case turns my Righteous Cleansing on. But to be honest, I'm probably just going to block his Hammer for 6 and then send back 4. Again, playing to this fatigue. It looks like this time I'm just making the decision to go to 5 to send Righteous Cleansing back. I think that's actually a little dangerous. I think that's unnecessarily greedy. But maybe not. Maybe we just fatigue our opponent and he's never going to be able to, not Zealous Belting, never be able to Terra Sunder us because he's just not going to be able to keep 3 cards like ever. Maybe he'll be able to like block with 3 cards and Arsenal Terra Sunder and then block with 2 cards and Terra Sunder us, but we still have 4 armor. So we're kind of protected from that. Honestly, both lines probably equal winning the game. But I like being a little bit safer, especially when it's like fatiguing our opponent is just so automatic here. Well, now we get to go to 4. Send 8 and then Arsenal Staunch Response, and none of this dominate fear even matters anymore. Because they got to give us 2 cards here, or Civic Steps and a card. And not too sure they want to give us Civic Steps. They should have definitely used it on our Zealous Belting turn. Seems they do want to give us Civic Steps, and we see a red Buckling Blow, which is another interesting inclusion. Not as interesting as Smashing Good Time, but certainly not a card you see out of Bravo all the time. So this feels like that pummel. And I feel like I can just let him pummel me? I feel like I should just block like 9. Not too sure why I wouldn't. Do get some gauntlets value. Only going to take 2 here, and then we get to hammer for 6. But hammer for 6 and hammer for 4 are about the same thing when your opponent's at 1 with no life. But maybe they still have like a D-react left. Yeah, I think I'm just supposed to block 9. Take the same 2. Then hammer for 4. Guess I'll just block for 4. I figured he'd come in for 6 here. No, we'll let him have the gold. And then we're just going to attack him with... We're going to make a surge and debilitate for 8, which is going to eat up 3 cards. And he has no deck. This was definitely an interesting game. I don't think it should have been as close as it appears at the end here. I think I just got super greedy to like throw a Righteous Cleansing. Not that I was at risk of anything bad happening to me, I don't think, with 4 armor. Especially since he wasn't going to be able to keep a hand big enough to even threaten anything. But we knew we still had the Staunch Response coming around, and with 4 armor plus a 3 block, that's a Terra Sunder, and I'm not sure he would have ever even got to keep 3 cards. And with 2 cards, I don't think he could ever threaten more than 8, which we could always just block. We had 12.76 value, and they had 12.71. So a lot closer than I would like, even though we were winning clashes. But yeah, we managed to win that game. I feel like we were in control of that game almost the entire time. There was one point where they roused us and revealed a Crippling Crush, and we just had to sort of accept that we were going to get Crippling Crush that turn. Unfortunately for our opponent, we drew a Staunch Response, and I think the rest of the game kind of snowballed out of control for our opponent at that point. So maybe the matchup isn't as terrible as I thought it was. Maybe it's closer to 50-50 with like Bravo getting a few points. I'm not even sure if it's like 55-45. Maybe it's that bad. Of course, most of your Bravo opponents probably won't be playing Smashing Good Time, so that's probably not helping our opponent in this game very much. I guess it was still like a Nimbleism though, so it's like it allowed him to deal 16 instead of 13 with Rouse, which was a little scary, but it's still just 3 damage, and we still outvalued our opponent, even if just marginally. So yeah, definitely wanted to bring this game, as I had to show you guys Bravo because I told you I would, and I think it also showcases just how important it is to be playing stuff like Staunch Response. Like if we didn't have Staunch Response that game, I think we're just getting like blown out by multiple dominated Crippling Crushes. You can only really stop 1 with armor alone. And honestly, the Sink Belows were kind of unnecessary. They were just sort of like a 4 block. They didn't really stop any effects, although they can in certain situations. Getting them in Arsenal would have been good early game with the misplay that I had Debilitate in Arsenal instead of Sink Below. But I don't think Sink Below is probably that needed. In fact, in the current deck I'm playing, like right now, I've already moved off Sink Below. So just remember to bring your Staunch Responses into Bravo, and I think you'll be fine. So thanks for joining me. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the views, and hope that these videos can be helpful, maybe even a little entertaining if you're into this sort of Guardian stuff. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll be back next time with another video, probably playing Victor. All right, bye.